These Spanish-style veggie balls always go down a treat with my family, served with a tomato Orzotto and a creamy cashew aioli, which really brings the dish to life. Today you'll learn how to layer incredible flavor without using any fresh produce, which means you probably already have most of these ingredients in your store cupboard. So let's get cooking. So first things first, we're going to rehydrate these soya chunks, and I'm going to do it in some vegan beef stock. So I'll just crumble that into a pan and then add in your water. The brand I'm using is called Orzo, if you want to use that one. And then we'll add in our soya chunks. This is going to impart a really nice flavor into them, but most importantly, rehydrate them. You could rehydrate them in vegetable stock, just simply salted water. You could add some soy sauce or marmite to the water. So lots of options there. And we'll let them simmer for about 5 minutes. I also soaked the walnuts in boiling water. Here I am setting up the camera, but I of course forgot to press record. As you can see, these are getting really nice and plump, which is exactly what we want, absorbing all that lovely vegan beef stock, umami goodness. These dehydrated soya chunks are one of my new favorite protein sources. They have 52 grams of protein per 100 grams, which is just insane. And they're also sort of bland in flavor, similar to tofu, so you can flavor them exactly how you want to. So I'm going to be using black beans for these veggie balls. So we'll just drain them off, then give them a good rinsing. Now some people will dry out the black beans in the oven or an air fryer. Personally, I find just drying them in a tea towel is quite enough, frankly. Otherwise you can end up with really dry veggie balls, or if you're making a sort of veggie burger, that can end up quite dry as well. And I'll just strain these soya chunks now that they're done simmering. Ooh, steamy. And then once the soya chunks have cooled down enough that you can handle them, we're going to squeeze out some of that moisture, or else you're going to have very wet veggie balls. You don't have to get it completely dry, just get out most of the moisture. So we'll be using the food processor for this recipe, and we're going to start by adding in those soya chunks, and then drain off your walnuts, and they can go in as well. And we'll just pulse this into a sort of rustic texture. This is what we're looking for, a nice bit of texture in there for the veggie balls. And then you can empty the soya chunks and walnuts into a large bowl. Okay, back to the food processor. We're going to add in all the other ingredients now, starting with those black beans that we dried, tomato puree, 1.5 tablespoons. We're going to add in 2 really umami ingredients, starting with some dark soy sauce, and then some good old Marmite, classic English product. Probably one of the most umami ingredients out there, a teaspoon of that. You could add some red miso if you can't get Marmite, or just add in more soy sauce. Then a couple tablespoons of olive oil, as there isn't much fat in any of the ingredients that we're using. So this will add a really nice mouthfeel to the veggie balls. For acidity, I'm going to add in some sherry vinegar, but you could use red wine vinegar or balsamic vinegar. Sherry vinegar has a really nice sort of tart sweetness. And then since we're not using fresh produce, I'm going to use a teaspoon of granulated onion. Actually, that was granulated garlic, but we are also adding some granulated onion. Next up, since we're going for the Spanish sort of theme, we're going for 1.5 teaspoons of smoked paprika. This is my favorite brand, in case you're interested. Then just a little ground cumin, for that lovely earthy sweetness. Next, some flaxseed to help bind the veggie balls. Also add in some extra nutrients. And lastly, a good grating of black pepper. And then we'll just blend this into a sort of rustic paste. You'll probably need to scrape it down once or twice. And that's what we're looking for. We don't need it too rustic, as we've got the texture from the soya chunks and the walnuts. Okay, so into our walnuts and soya chunks, we're going to add in that lovely flavoursome black bean paste. Smells absolutely delicious. I can definitely smell the smoked paprika, that's for sure. Just got a couple more ingredients I want to add, starting with some sun-dried tomatoes. These add a really lovely juiciness and sort of chewy texture to these veggie balls. I'm adding a fair few just because I really like the texture. You're welcome to adjust it for your preference. And then I like to add just a tablespoon of breadcrumbs. I find it gives them a slightly lighter texture. And that's it. All that's left to do now is mix it all together, and then we'll shape them. And this is the sort of texture we're looking for. It's not really sticky, but it's definitely got some moisture in there, as we do not want dry veggie balls. Okay, I'm going to roll these out now. I've got a bowl of water here just to dip my fingers into, and that's going to stop the mix from sticking to my hands. Makes it so much easier. And you can make these into little mini sort of veggie balls, or you can go for bigger ones. I used to eat meatballs, so I'm kind of basing it off of that. So standard sort of meatball size. Okay, so we've got 17 vegetables, which if you had to buy these from a supermarket, they would cost considerably more than we have spent on these ingredients. So I'm just going to drizzle over a little olive oil. This is going to help them crisp up when we cook them, and we'll just give them a little roll around. It's also going to help prevent them from drying out, which is definitely important. And I'm going to cook them in the air fryer, but you're welcome to pan fry them, bake them. Instructions for all the cooking methods will be in the description box as usual. Spread them out evenly. We'll be able to fit them all in. Yes, I think we will. Just leave a little space between each one so that the hot air can reach every veggie ball. And then while these cook, we'll get on with the tomato orzotto. Look who's waiting for me when I get home. There she is. I'm coming. Now that we've got the vegetables underway, I want a carbohydrate to go with them. And instead of the classic spaghetti and tomato sauce, we're going to make a tomato orzotto, which is lovely and creamy and indulgent. Similar to risotto, but instead of rice, we'll be using orzo, which is a really small pasta shape, similar to the shape of a rice grain. For the tomato orzotto, we're going to start by heating a pan, and we're going to add a tablespoon of olive oil. If you don't want to use olive oil, you could use some aquafaba, the liquid from chickpeas, or just use some veggie stock or water. Now I know I said we were going to do store cupboard only, but I am going to use a finely diced onion for this. I feel like most people have onion and garlic in their cupboards, so I'm going to allow myself this one. But you could just use some granulated onion if you wanted to. And we'll just sweat down this onion gently, just for maybe 5-7 minutes until it starts to soften. Adding in a pinch of salt to help this process. Not trying to brown it, just slightly soften it. The onion is starting to soften. I'm now going to add in one finely chopped garlic clove, and we'll just let that cook for 30 seconds or so. Then just turn up the heat slightly, and we're going to add in our orzo. And we'll cook this for a minute or two and almost lightly toast it in the pan, which adds a really lovely flavor to the orzotto. Also going to add in some dried oregano, about a teaspoon of dried oregano, and the same of dried thyme. Now that the orzo has been toasted, we're going in with a good dollop of tomato puree. Stir that through. We want to get it really nice and caramelized on the bottom of the pan, which will release its natural sweetness. And then just like with a risotto, we're going to gradually add in our vegetable stock. And we'll stir fairly regularly to develop the sort of starch and gluten in the pasta, leading to a lovely creamy orzotto. Also going in with 1 can of chopped tomatoes. And you can wash out that can with some of the vegetable stock so that we don't waste any. And that's it really. We'll cook this for 10 to 15 minutes or until the orzo is nice and al dente, soft but with a slight bite. You don't have to be constantly stirring it. You can leave it for a few minutes, come back, give it a stir, and so on. Okay, this orzo is perfectly cooked. It's beautifully oozy and creamy from all the starch that's been released from the pasta. Really nice comfort food here. So I'm just going to go in with a good grating of black pepper. The tomatoes are actually quite sweet, so that's going to help sort of counter that with some savouriness. And then for a little tang, I'm going to add a drizzle of balsamic vinegar. The acidity really brings out all the other flavours. Absolutely beautiful. That's going to go perfectly with these veggie balls and the cashew aioli. Are you hanging out with Mitzi, Poppy? Mitzi doesn't look too impressed. Come on in. If you want to join the Earthy Goodness Kitchen community and get early access to videos, recipe PDFs, and also just access to me, you can ask me any cooking questions that you like. Scan this QR code, or there'll be a link in the description box. Instead of making a classic aioli or alioli, as I believe it's called in Spain, we're going to make one with cashews, which is lovely and creamy and luxurious. And I am going to cheat here and use 1 fresh garlic clove, but you're welcome to just use granulated garlic to keep it completely a store cupboard recipe. Okay, cashew alioli, super simple. Just throw your cashews into a blender. Okay, that's definitely going to be too small. Let's go into the big one. If you don't have a high-speed blender, you will need to soak these cashews in boiling water for about 30 minutes. And then adding in some lemon juice for acidity, 1 sort of medium-sized garlic clove. You can add more if you like it really garlicky. A pinch of salt and a good grating of black pepper. And then the water to help it blend. And it's as simple as that. I'm going to blend it into it's lovely and smooth. Now this cashew alioli is definitely going to be a bit of a scraping situation as it is very thick, which is exactly what we want, a nice sort of thick mayonnaise consistency. So make sure you've got a good spatula. And there you go, you've got a really lovely thick cashew alioli. Definitely don't go kissing anyone after tasting this, unless they really like garlic. The veggie balls are nice and golden and crispy now on the outside. Let's have a look on the inside and then we'll plate up. Those are looking good. They don't look too dry. They've got a nice bit of sort of juiciness in there. With a good risotto, you should be able to create almost like a wave when you toss it in the pan. Of course, this is an Orzotto, but it's a similar sort of texture that you want. A nice sort of loose texture. A couple ladles of that delicious tomato Orzotto. Those umami veggie balls. A good dollop of that garlic alioli, cashew alioli even. Alioli already contains garlic. I think a little drizzle of olive oil as well would be nice. And then I've got some pan grattato in the cupboard, which is essentially breadcrumbs, parsley, lemon zest, a little bit of garlic. That's going to be lovely on here. An absolutely delicious meal packed with flavour, all made from mostly store cupboard ingredients. The veggie balls taste as if they've got mushrooms in them. They are just that sort of umami, probably coming from the marmite, the soy sauce. The sun-dried tomatoes also add a good amount of umami to them. Really flavoursome, and they've got a lovely sort of chunky texture and still not dry, which is the most important thing. And then a lovely and comforting Orzotto, nice and sweet from the tomatoes, and the Orzo still has a slight little bite in the centre, which is just perfect. And to finish it all off, that creamy alioli that just adds a splash of flavour into the mix. Give this dish a go, come back to this video and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. For some more plant-based goodness, check out this video.